You know, we spend a lot of time talking about exercise for our hearts, our lungs, our muscles. But what if the most important muscle you're training is actually your brain? We're about to dive into the incredible connection between moving your body and literally rewiring your mind. Let's get into it.
So let's just ask the question right up front. We tend to think of our bodies and brains as separate, right? But the science is telling us a completely different story. It suggests that one of the most powerful things you can do for your brain health might be happening on a treadmill or a trail.
And to really understand why this is such a game changer, we have to start with the big, universal challenge every single one of our brains faces, just the process of aging and, the looming risk of neurodegeneration.
I mean, let's be honest. Conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are terrifying. They're defined by the steady loss of our neurons, the very cells that make us who we are. And with so few effective treatments out there, the search for ways to prevent this, to protect our brains, well, it's one of the most urgent missions in medicine today.
Okay, but here's where the story takes a really hopeful turn. It turns out our brains are not just passively waiting for things to go wrong. They have this incredible built-in secret weapon for adapting and staying strong. And exercise? It's like the key that unlocks it.
And that secret weapon is called neuroplasticity. I love this concept. Think of it as your brain's superpower to constantly rewire itself. Seriously, every time you learn a new language, pick up a musical instrument, or even just form a new memory, that is neuroplasticity in action. It's the physical mechanism of growth.
And if you zoom way in, this rewiring really happens in two main ways. You've got long-term potentiation, or LTP, which is all about strengthening the connections between brain cells. It's like turning a dirt path into a paved highway. But then you also have long-term depression, or LTD, which does the opposite. It weakens and cuts away the connections we don't use. And you need both. It's all about making the brain more efficient.
So where does exercise come in? Well, think of a workout as priming the engine for all this change. It floods your brain with these amazing molecules, and the most famous one is called BDNF, Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor. Honestly, you can just think of BDNF as miracle grow for your brain. It creates this perfect, fertile environment for your neurons to grow and build stronger connections.
So this all sounds pretty straightforward, right? Exercise is good for the brain, so more exercise must be better. Simple. But, well, this is where the science gets really interesting and reveals a huge twist in the plot.
Let's really challenge that assumption, because it turns out the relationship between your workout and your brain isn't just a straight line up. It's way more nuanced than that. The dose of exercise, it matters a lot.
And to get why the dose is so important, we have to understand that neuroplasticity has two faces. The changes in your brain aren't always for the better. They can be incredibly helpful and protective, or they can actually be harmful.
So on one side, you have adaptive neuroplasticity. That's the good stuff. That's what strengthens our brain and protects it. But if you push the system too hard, you can trigger maladaptive neuroplasticity. And this is driven by something called oxidative stress, an imbalance that can literally damage and kill your brain cells.
So how do we know which one is happening? Well, scientists can actually measure it. They look for these little chemical signals of damage, and a key one is called lipid peroxidation, or LPO. The easiest way to think about LPO is like a measure of cellular rust in your brain. A higher LPO number means more stress, more damage. Okay, now let's look at the actual data, because this is wild. This chart shows what happens to that LPO marker, that brain rust, with exercise. Now look at the bar for moderate volume exercise. It's at negative 2.41. That's not just zero, it's negative. That means this level of exercise wasn't just preventing damage, it was actively reducing it below the normal baseline. It was making the brain healthier. That is adaptive plasticity in action.
But hang on, the story doesn't end there. Because what happens when you push it too far? Well, the research is pretty clear. Going from moderate to high volume can completely flip the script.
Now look at this. This is the bar for high-volume exercise. That LPO number, our damage marker, shot all the way up to positive 4.55. It's not just that it didn't help, it actually caused more oxidative damage than doing nothing at all. The very same activity, just at a higher dose, became harmful. That's maladaptive plasticity.
So the takeaway here is absolutely critical. Getting the dose right is everything. Because when you find that sweet spot, that moderate zone, exercise stops being just exercise and transforms into this powerful strategy for building your brain's long-term armor.
And we're not just talking about one little benefit. Getting the dose right sets off this amazing cascade of protective effects all throughout the brain. It builds resilience from multiple angles against the very signatures of the diseases we worry about most.
I mean, just look at how versatile this brain armor is. When it comes to the amyloid plaques we see in Alzheimer's, the right kind of exercise helps clear them out. For the protein clumps in Parkinson's, it helps the brain's cleanup crew work better. It fights that oxidative stress directly by boosting the brain's own built-in antioxidant defenses. It even helps generate fresh, healthy mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside our cells. It's incredible.
So in the end, it seems exercise is really a conversation with your own biology. It's not always about pushing harder or going longer. It's about finding that sustainable dose that unlocks your brain's amazing potential to protect and rebuild itself. And it seems that consistency over crushing intensity is what really matters. So yeah, exercise is going to change your body, but that's not the most interesting part. The real question is, who do you want your brain to become?